he just went low. He's in his head. He's in his head. He's open. His head wide open. Cracked open in the face.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's my man 100 back in with another episode of How's My Team. Got a bit of a big slide this week because everybody's basically playing this week. Obviously, we've got the Wanderers Women, obviously going up against Canberra United. We've got the men's against the Mariners, the men's Wanderers side. We've got Liverpool up against Nottingham Forest in the Premier League. We've also got the Titans, obviously, playing their second of their trial games for pre-season. We also technically can talk about the Giants in their match simulation with Collingwood as well as some miscellaneous stuff like obviously Chicago Cubs coming back for spring training, among other things. So yes, huge slate of games to talk about my teams, and so let's get started with the episode. So we'll start with the Wanderers Women. They had to go up against Canberra United in Canberra, and unfortunately it was a 3-0 loss to Canberra United for the Wanderers Women. And it was pretty disappointing in terms of that. Ultimately, I was obviously seeing the score show up on my phone through notifications. Obviously, I was at work yesterday, so picked up an extra shift. So didn't watch this game at all. Possession was 55% to Canberra United, 45% to the Wanderers. Shots on goal was 24 shots to 3, with 11 shots on target for Canberra United and 2 shots on goal for the Wanderers. Shooting accuracy obviously was much better for the Wanderers, but again, in saying that, it's pretty obvious considering that we didn't have that many shots in general. No corners, which is a bit surprising. Got 12 corners for Canberra United, but no corners for the Wanderers. It's one of those things where we just got outplayed. We got outplayed very hard in the game. So Canberra ended up scoring in the 11th minute, the 66th minute, and the 75th minute. Yeah, pretty disappointing in terms of obviously other results kind of not going our way either. But, that's something that ultimately I think the international break has come at a good time for the Wanderers Women. They can recharge because they're very much in the line of dropping to the bottom again because obviously it's still a point gap between the Western Sydney Wanderers and Sydney FC, and ultimately that will stay that way until obviously after the international break because Sydney FC have the bye this week, so they've got an extra week. And then obviously goal difference is also a big thing. Obviously we're 2 goals ahead of Sydney FC in terms of scoring, but in saying that we've conceded 9 more goals than Sydney FC, which is very disappointing because even if Sydney FC get a draw, that means that the Wanderers, before a result happens, will drop to the bottom of the ladder. So it's disappointing, but again, like I said, the international break for the women's probably come at a good time because they don't play again until the 14th of March. So we've got a couple of weeks in between games here. So obviously the 22nd, which is today when I'm recording at least the first part of this video. It's 22nd today, and yeah, it's almost a month, until the next game. So international break coming at a really, really good time, because they just need to recharge. Again, like obviously, that game is against Victory. Victory at the moment in the A-League Women's competition, in sixth position right now. Obviously, that could that change? It could drop to seventh if Brisbane end up winning against Adelaide United, but who knows in the women's competition. But yeah, obviously got Melbourne Victory. Then after that, we've got Melbourne City, which is not ideal. Then Wellington Phoenix, which is probably a little bit better, but not by a lot. In fact, actually, it's currently sixth position, first position, and third position that we're gonna play in the next couple of games for the Wanderers, and then I believe they're off on they're on the bye in the last round. So ultimately, trying to stay out of that wooden spoon position is going to be very difficult. Obviously, playing against obviously Victory is probably the lowest team in the competition that we play at this point in time. Obviously, with Wellington, they possibly could rest players. Depends on where they're sitting on the table, obviously, and trying to consolidate a position in the finals. But who knows? It's one of those things where it's pretty disappointing to see the Wanderers kind of go down this way. But in saying that as well, I think that the international breaks come at a really, really good time for them, because, well, they're getting pumped 3-0, not being able to score in a game. It's one of those things where there's not much we can do about it, but it's, they should be playing a little bit better than they have, but they've had a good 2026 part of the 2025-26 season so far, in terms of a much better results and not getting blown out too many times in games like this. So much more improvement, obviously, from the Wanderers. The Wanderers women's team obviously need to improve on things. Obviously, international break. Some of the players that obviously in that team will represent some of the international teams. Obviously, in the Women's Asian Cup, which is obviously in Australia. So a lot of the Asian nations and teams like Australia will be in that competition. Some of the other players, obviously, that are internationals in terms of other nations will play in international games as well, obviously in the lead up to a Women's World Cup coming up in the next couple of years, I'm sure. But it's just one of those things where the Wanderers just didn't have any answers, and Canberra United just needed to play better, and they did in this game compared to the first outing. I feel they didn't take the Wanderers lightly this time, and played a lot better in that, and obviously needed to turn things around, obviously, to get into that top 2 spot, which they are at the moment. But obviously trying to keep a top 2 spot secured for them, obviously for finals. And obviously trying to push some of the other teams out of that top 2 position and trying to consolidate at least a spot in the finals, if not go much better than that. But I don't think the Wanderers women probably won't, I think at this point, play finals for the women's game. They'd have to win their next 3 games at least to be any shot, and playing against 2 teams in the top 4, and all 3 teams at this point being in the top 6. It's going to be difficult, especially if Brisbane do win as well. Makes it a little bit more difficult as well. But even the best result, obviously, in terms of the game that's left for this game, in terms of Adelaide and Brisbane, is obviously a draw. Brisbane could lose, obviously, still, and they'll be on the same amount of points as Victory. But it's just one of those things where I feel like even winning out, you have to hope that one of the teams that are in sixth position, if not all of them around that position, tend to lose, which some of them will probably be playing each other, which won't help us. But, as long as they try and stay out of that wooden spoon position, I don't think we'll mind the result on what the Wanderers have done, especially obviously the second half of the season this year. I think you look at that and look back at it and say that it's much improvement on especially the first half, but ultimately over the last couple of years you can see that the improvement is there from some of the players that have been playing, including a lot of the younger players, which is one thing that I think has been good for this team, is that with obviously a lot of the players that are playing first grade, some of them getting injured, some of the younger players have had to step up and ultimately have been mainstays in this team for quite a number of weeks, and some of them have been really, really good. Really good players, and ultimately will probably stay with this team, if not get picked up by other teams. I hope that they don't get picked up by other teams, but if they continue to improve on week-to-week performances, who knows, there might be the next stars in terms of the Wanderers team, if not other teams that they might go to, but especially the Wanderers, if they can keep them, that'd be good, because if they can, grow a group of players and they don't get injured or don't overwork obviously when they're playing games, and can grow around each other and obviously work on combinations, work on things like goal shooting, defense. It'd be better for a pack for a women's team, or even just like a team in general, because obviously team sport will improve with that synergy. As you've seen with Canberra United, they've won a couple competitions the last couple of years as well. Melbourne City, also another one. As much as we hate Sydney FC, they over the last few years they've been great in terms of the women's competition as well, and they've had that synergy. And I think obviously with the way that obviously Sydney FC in the position that they're in this season ultimately has been from some of those departures from some of those women's players that have been really, really good, that have had to transfer away from Sydney FC to other horizons in terms of other competitions, and it's really hurt them this season. And you'll get that from competitions, you get that from team sports. Like a team's like really, really good, and a lot of their players will move on, or will sign to get better deals. Obviously, if we say like the men's, for example, obviously they'll sign for other teams in terms of getting better contracts. Some of them will go over to the Premier League or go into like obviously the big leagues, La Liga, Premier League, Bundesliga, that sort of all the MLS. A lot of those competitions being higher in terms of the A-League, in terms of the pecking order, and getting more game time in terms of that, improving on their skills. It does hurt teams when a lot of pieces move away, or in a situation of retiring. Sometimes you'll get a lot of those players all at once, and then the team has to turn things around relatively quickly, because if they don't, obviously it gets into a situation where it gets a bit nasty. But it's one of those things, hopefully, with the Wanderers, especially to round out the next couple of games of this season after, obviously, the international break. If they can keep synergy and do well in the next couple of games, avoid that wooden spoon, I feel like that'll be a great result for them. If they can get any higher in the ladder at the end of the season, that'd be great. If they end up getting the wooden spoon, it's going to suck for them, because especially after the second half of the season, they've been improving so much in terms of results. It kind of doesn't seem fair if like the second half they've done really, really well, and yes, it's that first half of the season that's kind of let them down and that gives them the wooden spoon. But at this point, obviously, they still haven't got it. They're still in front of Sydney FC at the moment, but obviously a lot of results will have to go their way to get out of that situation. And getting a win somewhere will probably help in the long run, because if there is a situation where we can get a win more so than Sydney FC can, that's going to help a lot, and especially if it's a win with a couple goals in it as well, obviously a couple goal margin. Like the men's, if we could do that, that'd be great. But we'll see what happens. 3-0 loss to Canberra United away from home, and yeah, it's not going to get any easier as we go into the international break and after that as well. So we'll see what happens. We'll briefly talk about the Giants because obviously their next preseason game will be the more important one. Obviously with match simulation, this is a little bit different. So they went up against the Collingwood Magpies. It was a 35-point win in their match simulation game on Friday. So ultimately, it was 17 goals, 8 to 11 goals, 9, 110 points to 75. And it was a good hit out. Obviously, there was some young players that obviously were jumping in to play this game. Obviously, players like Clayton Oliver, obviously recruits from and transfers from other teams that have been brought into the Giants this season. Obviously, we had the devastating news a couple weeks back that Tom Green has done his ACL, so he's out for the whole of the 2026 season, which is very, very unfortunate and very sad, especially after having quite a few injury issues over the last few weeks in general. But ultimately, at least some of the young players have been stepping up, which has been great in terms of this team. Ultimately, the more important game, obviously in terms of pre-season, is coming up this week. It'll be a couple of days after this video goes up. It'll be on the 26th, so the Thursday at 4:10 in the afternoon, because it's the Sydney Derby in pre-season. Obviously, this will be another match simulation type game, but obviously it will actually be a pre-season game proper before obviously the teams go up in the regular season for opening round, which is on the 7th for the Giants. I believe the Swans are playing on the 6th. I think they're playing the Friday night game because I think the season starts on Friday, if not Thursday. And they play against Carlton, I believe, off the top of my head. But obviously they'll play the game beforehand, the day before, if not a couple of days before. And then the Giants will play on the Saturday against the Hawks. So a rematch for the elimination final from last year against the Hawks at home at NG. I won't be going to that game, unfortunately, as much as I would like to go. I think I am working that weekend. My roster has been changed, so it's going to swing in terms of weekends. It's going to switch. So we'll see what happens when it comes to the season in general and watching games. I haven't even got my membership yet. I think my dad is trying to work that out. But ultimately, hopefully I can get down and watch some games. That'd be great. And hopefully they can get into some good rhythm with pre-season and obviously going into the season, because an ACL injury to Tom Green, one of our big workers in the middle of the field, is not ideal, which means that players like Finn Callaghan and obviously Clayton Oliver obviously being brought into the team, he's going to be very important in terms of new signings for this club to improve on the defense and in the midfield. Obviously Toby Green probably have to step up in the middle as well and do some workload in there with our ruckman to see how we go, because we're definitely going to feel it in the first half of the season, and especially towards the end stretch we'll definitely feel it then with Tom Green. If they can get in a good swing to start off with and keep that momentum right through the season, it'll look good. The midfield just definitely needs to step up. in terms of workload, because it's going to be a lot of work. And if we can keep that core group on the in the middle, I think Cogs is supposed to come back too. Stephen Cornelio is supposed to be back as well. Brent Daniels is another player who obviously missed the finals just by the skin of his teeth in terms of recovery from injury. I think he should be ready to go as well. Josh Kelly, I think, won't be available until like the second half of the season still, I think, if he plays this year, which is, another big nail in the coffin in terms of the Giants, in terms of their like big main core roster, in terms of experience, group experience. But we got enough good players in the team to turn things around, obviously, especially if we can keep Jesse Hogan, and Aaron Cadman at the front with Jake Stringer, keep all of them healthy, and keep everybody else healthy. That'd be great. 35-point win, obviously, over Collingwood in their match simulation. Obviously, the next preseason games in the next couple of days. Be obviously 4 days from now when I'm recording. It is one of those things. But, we'll see what happens when it comes to that. Hopefully the season will start strong for the Giants. But in terms of big results, we've got to talk about the Titans in their second preseason game. Obviously, they're playing in the Sunshine Coast, and they played against the Melbourne Storm. And let's be real, Melbourne Storm, they have most of their team that's mostly going to play this season. There's a few players, obviously, that were in the team that aren't. They're like fringe players, obviously, for their team. Ultimately, the Titans playing with most of their side, obviously, that they've got for this year. They played in this game, and it was a whopping 42 points to 12 win for the Titans, which makes that 2 wins from 2 games in the preseason challenge. And in fact, I think they actually just missed out not that much on the preseason trophy, so we nearly got the I think it's $100,000 or something is the prize pool for preseason. I always forget, but obviously I think Brisbane won it. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. There's a few teams that have won it previously, but 42 points to 12, fantastic result for the Titans. Halfway through this game, my internet dropped out when I was at work, so I ended up getting to, I think it was 16 points to 12 at halftime. But it stayed with that, and I didn't get any results after that until obviously when I was signing off, when Jalen Groot just scored the last try of the game, basically, or the second last try and the last try. But Bo Firma scored the first try. 6.5 minutes in, missed the kick though, missed the conversion. Then obviously Melbourne did end up scoring next. They scored in the 23rd minute, went ahead with the conversion, and was 6 points to 4 in terms of that. Then they scored again. Pretty fluky second try, we'll say, when it comes to the Melbourne Storm, but they play relatively well. Unfortunately, AJ just missed a bounce completely, misread it, and stuff like that will happen. But Suavali Farlongo scored. It was 12 points to 4 at the start of the 29th minute of the game. Philip Sami scored in the 31st minute. And then Arama Howe scored in the 34th minute with a conversion, 16 points to 12 in the 36th minute. Then it went to half-time, and then it was just an onslaught of Titans tries after that. Fayema, I don't even know how I would actually pronounce that. Fayemani, I think, is one of the wingers that actually played for the Titans during this game. He scored. Conversion was missed by Lachlan Ilias. So at least, we're getting a situation where, yes, Jaden Campbell is kicking, but also we're getting a situation where Lachlan Ilias is also kicking conversions, or at least trying to anyway. Then Chris Randall scored in the 58th minute. Then Tonamapia, Jensen Tonamapia, big guy, big tall guy, really good on the wing. Moves really decently fast for a big guy. I was watching some of the highlights, and obviously he actually got a run, got a line break a couple of minutes beforehand, and it was looking good for that as well. Broke down the sideline and did get tackled on the way through, but did end up scoring. And then Jalen de Groot scored in the 72nd minute, and also this towards the end of the 76th minute. So 42 points to 12, very good result, especially the defense. Defense was obviously holding the Melbourne Storm to 12 points. Fantastic in terms of result. But yeah, just one of those things where pre-season they played relatively well. The ladder, it says that we're in 8th position, but there's no way that we're in 8th position. They said that we got really close to winning it. So so that means the Melbourne Storm ended up losing both of their pre-season games, and the Roosters did as well. And we'll say that an extra bonus in terms of regular season is that the World Club Challenge, the Broncos lost. They lost against Hull KR by 6 points as well. So that was pretty impressive as well. That means that Brisbane Broncos are now 0-4 in terms of World Cup Challenge games, playing against teams in the English Super League in terms of rugby league competition. So that's pretty funny, especially after Hull KR kind of had like an interesting couple of weeks, first couple of weeks to their season, because they ended up getting beaten by York, I think it was, one of the teams that was promoted into the English Super League this year, and it was the first time that a champion team had lost to a team that had been promoted to the Super League for the first time in a long time, if not for the first time ever, in the first couple of rounds. So that was pretty impressive from them. Obviously, to turn things around. They played relatively well. Brisbane were coming at them at the end in the second half, but it was unfortunate that, yes, Brisbane did drop the ball a couple of minutes beforehand in terms of a try. I think it was to Shibasaki, I believe, that could have made things a lot more interesting and almost get into a situation where it was a 2-point ball game. But pretty unfortunate, obviously, for the Brisbane Broncos. But again, they lost again, which is funny. We'll take a piss take when it comes to that. So when it comes to the Titans, obviously they'll play on the 7th of March. So they'll play exactly the same day as the Giants played their first game in the opening round. So it'll be pretty... in fact, actually, what is the time for the Giants games? Because it's 5:30 in the afternoon for the Titans game, and I think it's around about the same time, if not a little bit earlier. I think earlier start. 4:15. So it's like literally one after the other on the same day to start round one against the Sharks. Obviously, we'll be playing in Cronulla. Excuse me. Felt that coming, and I was like, I got to get this out. I'm going to get these sentences out quick. But yeah, we don't play our first home game until like round 4, I believe. Yeah, round 4 against the Dragons. And then obviously we play back-to-back games because it's the Dragons and then the Broncos at home. First bye of the season will be round 8 for the Titans. We got another game against the Dragons. We do, and it'll be Jubilee in July. Okay, might be able to go to that game. It'll be one of those things where I'm just trying to work out if we could see Titans games, or there's one at Combank in April, so that's good. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what the season brings us, because if the defense that they brought in terms of scrambling defense in the last two games, obviously the preseason, it's going to look good. And hopefully the defense is a lot better. If it gets into a situation where we're not scoring as many points, but we're defending a lot and we're not conceding as many points, I feel like that's going to help us a little bit in the season. Whether we make finals or not is another question altogether. But if we're playing relatively well, I think we'll shock a few teams this season. So hopefully with that, with momentum that we've got from the two preseason games, we can go into round one and the first couple of rounds of this season rolling. Because, winning by 30 against Melbourne's pretty good. Obviously, winning by 12 against the Dolphins has also been pretty good. But, we just need to keep the momentum going. And if we can get more wins than losses this year, that'd be great. If we can get a couple of wins on the trot a couple of times this season and get a healthy streak of wins going, that's going to help us in the long run. And obviously will possibly put us on the edge of making finals as well if we can do that consistently throughout the season. It's going to be a long season, obviously, 27 rounds still throughout, but it's going to be one of those things where hopefully we can just turn a lot of things around. So it'll be a Saturday game. Most of the games I think we're playing is Saturday or Sunday. There's one Friday game, which is round 10 for the Titans, and then round 17 against the Bulldogs at home. I'm going to keep scrolling. A lot of them, Saturday, Sunday. There's a Thursday game against the Cowboys. But most of the games that we've got are mostly on Sundays, which makes some sort of sense. Obviously, this team in terms of box office hasn't really been great in terms of playing, and there's a few games that are like the late Sunday games. There's not too many. There's the 2:00 Eels game on Sunday, so that'll be the earlier game. There's a lot of situations where a lot of them won't be on prime time in terms of watching it on normal television. It'll be pay television and KO for those games. But, that's one of the things that this team has to go through because obviously they're not playing relatively great the last couple of seasons. So, the draws being the way it is kind of makes a little bit of sense. But we'll see what happens. Obviously, 30-point win over the Melbourne Storm in pre-season. Obviously, pre-season is very much different to actual season. But if we can keep the momentum and keep a lot of the structures that we have brought forward in the pre-season, improve on a few things as well. Obviously, I'll improve on defense and offense as well. If we can bring that to the first couple of rounds and get a couple of wins on the board early, especially, that'd be great for this team. But we just need to keep momentum and keep some win streaks going throughout the season, because if we can do that, we'll play much better, we'll be in a much better position, and obviously, finals obviously is big talk, but if we can manage to get a few wins on the board and just keep momentum through win streaks, that'll help us. And if we do get the finals, we get the finals. If we don't and get close, obviously we kind of expect that we're probably going to miss finals with how the competition is going to be. But if we're competitive for most of the season and probably are out of the finals in the last couple of weeks, yes, it's going to hurt, but at least then we can say, we're competitive for most of the season, compared to obviously last year, which, didn't start out great, kind of went all right in the middle, lost our way a little bit, and then obviously kind of fell apart at the end as well. If we can do much better than we obviously did last season, that'd be great. Obviously, winning more games than we did last season would be fantastic as well. Obviously, will be an improvement. But if we can win some of those games and win them convincingly, that'll be a lot better than just winning maybe one or two extra games than we did last season. But if we can keep momentum through, obviously win some win streaks going, keep some win streaks going, and win a lot more games, and obviously score more points and defend well, and obviously concede less points, will be in a good state of mind, and I think that'll be a massive improvement for this team, especially even if we don't make finals. If we can improve on those things, like obviously conceding less, which was the big thing, obviously, last year was conceding a lot of points. But if we can do that, concede less points per game and score more points per game, which obviously could lead to more wins, then that will be what we want. That'll be the first thing. That'll be the first thing that we want. Obviously, we want more wins. We want to make finals and stuff like that and be competitive. But if we're competitive, conceding less points, scoring more points, it'll lead to wins. And obviously, we'll get into a situation where we'll get into a good state of rhythm. But yeah, 42 points to 12 over the Melbourne Storm, and done relatively well in pre-season. Fantastic from the Titans. Good hit out in terms of pre-season for winning the 2 games that they played, and hopefully we can keep that momentum through into Cronulla, into round 1 against the Sharks. And what I can say is a disappointment for the Wanderers women's team. You can say it's worse for the men's team, because it was a 3-2 loss to Central Coast Mariners away from home for the Wanderers men's team. The thing is, they scored in the first 8 minutes. They scored. They were up 1-0 at the 8th minute of the game. Angus Fergate scored his first goal of the season for the Wanderers. The first time in a long time that he's scored. So he scored. Obviously, it was 1-0 at half time. Then the Central Coast scored. And it looked like it was like, oh, here we go. This is going to be a situation where we're going to lose by a lot. And then Ibasuki, he scored in the 69th minute to put us up 2-1, with plenty of time to go in the game. Then Central Coast scored in the 77th minute, and then also scored in the 89th minute. So like right before full time. Yeah, it's one of those things where very disappointing in terms of the Wanderers. They could have played a hell of a lot better. I think, obviously, it's one of those things where I feel like that they cursed, for one, and two, I feel like in a lot of ways, that the more they have possession in front of a team, the worse that they do, because they had 68% possession compared to 32% for Central Coast. They had 20 shots to 8 for the Wanderers. 8 shots on target compared to 4 for the Mariners. Obviously, the shooting accuracy was a lot less because obviously there was more shots. And across the board, it's pretty fine in terms of everything else. Offside, three times we're offside. And our pass accuracy was 90%, which is crazy. Like, it was 68% possession, 90% pass accuracy, and yet again, the issue is that we can't get on the scoreboard and score more goals than 2. So with that loss, that means that the Wanderers are anchored still on the bottom of the ladder, and it's a 3-point gap between last and second last now, with Perth Glory and Wellington Phoenix on 20 points and the Wanderers on 17. So realistically, it's one of those things now where it gets very much dire for this team to get off the bottom of the ladder, and I don't think they're going to do so. I feel like this team is just, I don't know whether it was at the start of the season feel like it was set up to fail, but I feel like that I'm cursed at this point in time, because it seems that every team that I go for since I started this series has had really, really rough issues, or like there's one team that's been really, really good, and then the rest have been absolute shit. Ultimately, when I started this series, obviously the Titans, they almost got last season. They only just squeaked out by the skin of their teeth in the last week of the season. The Giants actually played relatively alright. They just missed the top 4 by percentage, but obviously went out in the first game of finals. Obviously Liverpool ended up winning the season, like winning the Premier League last season. So obviously, I guess that's the good thing about last season. but then obviously they're having their issues as well this season. Still in plenty of the competitions at the moment, and obviously we'll get to Liverpool very shortly in the video. But it's just one of those things, and then obviously the Wanderers were playing, close to playing finals. They were playing finals last season, and they were scoring at the top of their game and at the top of the competition last season, and now they're barely scoring anything. In fact, Brisbane is very close to what we've scored this year. They've actually got 18 goals compared to our 17, but it's only just because it didn't look like that. It was going to look like that 4 or 5 weeks ago, but it's only just because Brisbane have not been playing well in the last few weeks, and they've been conceding a lot of goals as well. And the funny thing is, in terms of conceding goals, and I looked at this yesterday before the game had even started, we were actually in a situation where we were tied for third in terms of goals conceded this season, in total. I think obviously on top was Auckland and Sydney FC, but in saying that, after that, it was Victory, MacArthur, and us. I think we're all tied for third with 23 goals conceded apiece. Now it's obviously 26, so we're now third, fourth. I think we're down to seventh. I think now we're tied for seventh with 26. Obviously, we're tied with Central Coast as well in terms of goals conceded all year. It's just that obviously we haven't scored that many, which has been the worst thing. So with the ladder, with obviously 18 rounds, I think have already played, if not 17. Around 18. Central Coast are going to make up a game, but Brisbane have played an extra game so far. So on top is Newcastle Jets still. They won 1-0 over MacArthur. They're on 36 points. Then second was Auckland FC with 32. And funny thing is, I will say about Auckland FC, both the games that they had this week, because obviously they played in midweek against Sydney FC, and also played in the New Zealand Derby over the weekend, they had 2 own goals conceded in their games in terms of actually goals for them. Because Sydney FC were leading 1-0 very late in the game. It was in stoppage time. They scored an own goal on themselves, so it was a 1-1 draw, and Auckland got away with a draw in that game. And then the first goal of the New Zealand Derby, I don't know what the goalkeeper was doing for the Wellington Phoenix, but he was outside of his box, and that shot, I don't know whether I think he was trying to header, going for a header to clear the ball, and he's hit the ball with a header in the wrong direction into his own net. So it's funny how Auckland FC, they've had 2 own goals contribute to their goals this season, which is crazy, in the same week. But it's pretty crazy. So they're on 32 points. Sydney FC are in third position with 29 points. Fourth is also on 29 points, and that's Adelaide United. Fifth position is Melbourne Victory with 27. Then rounding out the top 6 is MacArthur with 25. Then down to 7th position, major jump from near the bottom, is Central Coast Mariners with 22 points. That's how congested it is towards the bottom of the ladder, and that's why obviously with the Wanderers anchored on the bottom, a win against Central Coast, even with a goal win, if the result was reversed, we would have jumped to 9th position in terms of points, because we would have been in front of obviously the Mariners, because they would have been on 19 points. Yeah, 19 points. Wellington obviously on 20, and Perth also on 20, and our goal difference would have been much better than all 3 teams. So we would have actually jumped from 12th to 9th. So that's how congested it was at the bottom, and how kind of important it was for the Wanderers to move off the bottom. And I apologise if you can't really see my face. Obviously the sun's starting to go down when I'm recording this on Monday. I'll be recording the last part of this on Tuesday morning, so if you don't really see my face in this part, I apologise ahead of time. But yeah, Central Coast moved from 11th right up to 7th position with the win over the Wanderers. Then dropping to 8th position is Melbourne City, also on 22 points. Then obviously in 9th position is Brisbane Roar, also on 22 points. And they really haven't moved in terms of points total. They've actually dropped quite a few positions now. 20 points in 10th position is Perth Glory. Then 11th position, also on 20 points, is Wellington Phoenix. And then down the bottom, obviously, is the Wanderers with 17 points. This upcoming round, that's the women's. I love that it defaults to that. This upcoming round is the Western Sydney Derby against Macarthur Bulls at Campbelltown. So we actually are playing away from home on Saturday. It's the late game on Saturday, so hopefully it is a situation where we can come away with points in that game. I highly doubt it, the way that they've been playing. There's obviously some players in the team that are playing well in terms of playing on the field. Like Ryan Fraser's played really well this season since he started. Obviously, Angus Thurgate's been playing relatively alright. Alex Gersbach hasn't gotten on the score sheet a lot, but when he has shot for goal, he's gotten relatively close with quite a few of his shots. Obviously, he has scored a couple of goals this year as well for the team, but really a lot of other players on the team right now are not, not pulling up their socks and then pulling their sleeves up, and it shows. It really shows because honestly, yes. The Wanderers women, they got belted 3-0, but they showed fight basically in most games that they have so far in 2026, and even some of the games ending in 2025 as well. But especially in 2026, they've been really playing well, and the men have not. They've had obviously the more possession in a lot of the games that they've played, and they've still lost a whole bunch of them, and it gets into a situation where I don't know if playing from behind is going to be anything good for them, because they can't play in front because they concede. They had a lead twice in this game and they still lost. So, they had, yes, obviously 21 minutes, obviously not including stoppage time in the second half, to keep obviously their advantage, but at the same time they've dropped the ball so many times that it's a bit hard to get into a situation of feeling like they're going to do anything good, because their record shows it. They're on the bottom. They're on the bottom with 4 wins, 9 losses, and 5 draws, and that's not good. That is not good at all, and it's -9 in terms of goal difference, which I'm surprised that is in double digits. Ultimately, Wellington Phoenix got belted, so they're -10 at the moment. But their coach obviously resigned as well after that game. But it's one of those situations where it just feels like when it comes to the Wanderers, who knows what they're going to dish up, but it hasn't been a great effort from a lot of players in the team. And, what else can I say? So 3-2 loss against Central Coast away from home, but pretty disappointing result in terms of the Wanderers season, because realistically at this point it feels like we're going to get the wooden spoon, because we can't be stringing up results like that all the time. Obviously Macarthur in front of all the teams are in front of us, but it's like top 6. Newcastle after that, Brisbane possibly could be a win, but who knows with them. Adelaide, we've lost twice against them this season. Melbourne City, we've lost and drawn with them this season, and then the Sydney Derby after that, and then Wellington Phoenix, which I believe is in New Zealand. I think that game is supposed to be. It says Apollo Project Stadium, which I'm assuming is in New Zealand. and then victory at home. So realistically, it's not a great run home. There's a couple of games that they possibly, in quotations, could win, but they've got to be competitive, and ultimately at this point in time, they're not. They're not, plain and simple. And ultimately, I said it for the women, that they need to pull their socks up and try and really, really push it when they were losing a lot. And they did. They did that. They've been very consistent. Ultimately, there's been a couple of games that haven't gone their way. Obviously, the Adelaide game, obviously just with Canberra United as well. And in the Brisbane game, obviously, that ended up being a draw. But they've been competitive in most of the games that they have had in 2026, and the Wanderers men have not all season, and it's pretty disappointing as a Wanderers fan, and sometimes feels like that this team seems to be cursed sometimes because, yes, it is a situation where they haven't had a wooden spoon at all since the club joined the competition. But it feels like this is the year that they could possibly do that. And it's, before their 15th year in the competition, it's pretty disappointing as a fan that's watched them since day dot to go through this. Obviously, the first inaugural season, obviously they went really poorly at the start. But again, in saying that, it's a new club, so you kind of expect that things are not going to go relatively well. Obviously, Auckland FC, yes, they started with a lot of success, but that isn't always the case. We've seen it with Western United. They played really poorly and have actually gotten the wooden spoon at least once, if not a couple of times in their tenure in the A-League. Obviously, when they return, if they return, we'll see what happens. Obviously, MacArthur, they've been up and down, inconsistent. Obviously, Australian Cup, obviously being a trophy that they've won previously, but in saying that, during the A-League seasons, they've been up and down as well. Obviously, it just seems to be, yes, it might be our turn, but at the same time, we've been very inconsistent this year, and it's really telling from a lot of players that haven't stepped up, and it's showing on the score sheet as well as in form. But yeah, pretty disappointing. Not much more I can say about it, honestly. Could talk about it for another 10-15 minutes. I could just keep ranting on and on about this team, but it's just, no effort and no heart, it feels like, from a lot of the players, the majority of the players in the team. There's some that are, but the majority, it just seems that they're not playing anywhere near their strongest football, or just have no heart for the club, and that's pretty disappointing as a fan, honestly. And now we move to Liverpool and the Premier League. So obviously they played on Monday. It's now Tuesday morning. They played on Monday morning, and it was a 1-0 win away from home to Nottingham Forest. But in saying that, there was a late goal that was scratched out from Alexis McAllister that was turned over by VAR. Was overturned for offside, and then in the 7th minute of stoppage time, before full time, Alexis McAllister kicks one in and wasn't offside for the second one. So the goal stood. But in saying that, Liverpool didn't play their best, despite having most of the possession. It was 52.8 to 47.2%, Liverpool's way. In terms of shots on target, it was 4 shots on target to 2. Off target, it was 8 shots for Nottingham Forest to 2 shots for Liverpool. So in general, they didn't play their best game, Liverpool, but still obviously come away with a win, and it was another stoppage time win, which obviously we haven't had that many this season, but ultimately there is a situation where we could have got a draw for this game, and we didn't, thankfully. But yeah, it's one of those things where and the table just updated. There's not much that we can do, obviously, about things when it comes to this game, but ultimately we just needed a win. 1-0, which is not ideal for our goal difference, but obviously we can fix that up later with some other teams as well. Puts Nottingham Forest in a really bad position as well. We'll get to that in a second. But since the table just updated, we'll just go over the updated totals for the table. So still on top is Arsenal with 61 points. Second is Manchester City with 56. So it's a 5-point gap rather between first and second position. Third position is Aston Villa still on 51 points. With the updated table now, Manchester United stay in fourth position with 48, so they ended up getting a win this morning because they were playing this morning. That's why I waited to record this rather than last night to record this Tuesday morning, because obviously I wanted an updated table for the Premier League. So because I knew that Manchester United played this morning, they played against Everton. Then after that is Chelsea in fifth position on 45 points. They ended up getting a draw with Leeds United, I think, from memory. So ultimately, with that, Liverpool are on the same amount of points, 45 points, in sixth position. It's just that they're behind by 10 goals in terms of goal difference, which is the difference between fifth and sixth position right now. Seventh position is Brentford with 40 points. Then down to 8th position is Bournemouth with 38. 9th position is Everton with 37. And also on 37 points in 10th position is Fulham. So that's your top 10. 11th position is Newcastle United with 36. Then 12th position is Sunderland, also on 36 points. Then we got Crystal Palace in 13th position with 35. Then 14th position is Brighton with 34 points. 15th position, a little bit outside the relegation zone. In fact, it's actually 2 wins between 15th and obviously inside the relegation zone is Leeds United. Obviously picking up a win and a draw in the last couple of games has helped them get out of that position. 16th position on 29 points and 4 points out of the relegation zone is Tottenham. They lost heavily against Arsenal in the North London Derby, so they're still on the fringe of being in the relegation zone, 4 points out of it. 17th position, obviously, is Nottingham Forest on 27 points, 2 points outside the relegation zone right now, and the relegation zone still is West Ham with 25 points in 18th position, 19th for Burnley with 19 points, and last position is Wolverhampton Wolves with 10 points. So they're officially into double digits, I think, as of this week, with the draw against Arsenal, which is pretty funny. So they've actually played an extra game as well. But so all the teams in the season so far are in double digits. It's great for them. Next game, obviously, coming up for Liverpool on the 1st of March is against West Ham United. So it'll be very interesting. Then obviously after that, we have 2 games the week after, because then we have 2 fixtures with Wolverhampton Wolves. One in the Premier League in the midweek, and then obviously FA Cup on the weekend, before we head over to Anfield for Tottenham the week after. It's going to be a pretty weird month in terms of March, because obviously we've got the fixture for the FA Cup. I think we've also got Champions League football. We might get our matchup in that month as well. We finish off the month of March with Brighton before, well, it looks like it's an extended period of time, so it might be the international period between March and April. So there might be a couple of weeks off. But yeah, pretty good result, obviously, for for Liverpool against Nottingham Forest. Obviously, especially away from home, especially considering the first result was a 3-0 loss, I believe, to Nottingham Forest last go around. So thankfully we've turned that around a little bit, and hopefully we can get some more goals against a lot of these teams down the bottom. Obviously we got West Ham, so that's 18th position. Obviously 20th position in terms of Wolves the game after, and then 16th position rather, the game after that. So before we play Brighton at the moment are in 14th position. So a lot of the teams that are in the bottom 10 we're facing off against this month in March, which is pretty crazy to say. Then obviously we go to Fulham, who's in the top 10 after that in April. So yeah, so interesting couple of weeks coming up. Hopefully we can get some wins on the board and get some good hefty goal differences and win by a decent chunk in a lot of these games, because that's going to help us in the long run. But yeah, 1-0 win over Nottingham Forest. Very late. It could have been obviously 2, but obviously win's a win, and a 1-0 win is better than a 1-0 loss. So we'll take it. We'll take the points. And that'll be it for this episode of How's My Team. So we had quite a few things to go through. One thing I will say is that the Liverpool Women, ended up playing in the FA Cup 5th round on Monday. And it was a 2-1 win over Everton. So Merseyside Derby in the FA Cup 5th round, and it was a win for Liverpool. So it was a 2-1 win, scored in both the 34th and the 45th minute. So it was 2-0 at halftime. They scored in the 72nd minute. It's red, so maybe it might be an own goal, but I'm not sure in terms of that. But obviously FA Cup, fantastic result for Liverpool in the FA Cup. So they go to the quarters. And I think that's supposed to be drawn tonight in terms of the last 8. I think that their draw for the quarterfinals tonight, they get drawn tonight. So we'll see what. Charlton Athletic, sorry, they must have done it this morning. Very early this morning. So they play Charlton Athletic away on Sunday the 5th of April. And obviously ties for the quarterfinals. Pretty sure that should be two legs, I think, unless that's just semis. But yeah, so 2-1 win in the Merseyside Derby in the FA Cup for Liverpool. Fantastic. For the women, especially they're getting on a roll. One thing I will say also is that the Cubs are on a situation that they're playing spring training right now. Spring training for them started on, I think it was Friday, if not Saturday, my time. It was Saturday. Saturday, my time. So they're playing. They're currently playing right now. They're up 3-1 at the moment. But in saying that, we'll say with the results that they've had so far, they've lost all 3 games so far that they've played. They lost against the White Sox in the first game, 8-1. Then the Rangers, 3-2. Then the Giants, despite getting to a situation and getting back into that game, they lost 4-2 in that game as well. So 0-3 right now, but looking good. They're at 3 runs to 1. They only just the Royals only just got a homer in the end of the 8th inning. So hopefully they can Chicago keep momentum and win this game to get the ball rolling for the season. But obviously spring training, some of the performances have been pretty pitiful, we'll say, in some of the games. Obviously early in the Giants game yesterday it was a bit rocky, but especially in the games against the White Sox. At least with the Rangers, they were kind of in relatively close to that game. Just very disappointing in terms of how they kind of ended the game. But they got absolutely belted in the White Sox game. And yeah, there was no excuse for that. I know it was first hit out for a lot of the players, but that's, it's one of those things where you're still just going to keep on winning. But, obviously pretty interesting week coming up this week. Obviously midweek, probably the day after this goes up in Australian time. Giants will be playing the Swans, obviously in their other preseason match simulation / preseason game. So hopefully it'll be a good hit out for them. Obviously Liverpool, I guess West Ham United. There's a whole bunch of games going on. Obviously the only team that isn't playing in terms of my current teams, obviously right now, is obviously the Titans, because they obviously had the week off leading into the season next week. The week after. So not this weekend coming, but the weekend after. Obviously, with the Giants, they obviously play the week after as well in opening round. So they play basically back-to-back weeks. So we'll talk about them starting next week proper. Obviously with pre-season, and then obviously we'll talk about them after the weekend of the 7th. We'll talk about them as well. So actually it might be a week between, right? Yes, because they played this week, and then they played no, so we won't actually be a break in between. So we'll play them. We'll talk about them back to back. Obviously the Titans will have the weekend off. Obviously with games in Vegas, obviously starting, so the season will officially start this weekend coming with the 4 teams. I think it was Newcastle, the Dragons, the Bulldogs, and the Cowboys, I think was the other one off the top of my head, but I could be forgetting, could be thinking the wrong teams, but I know Newcastle, Bulldogs, and the Dragons are over there. So I know at least those 3. I think Hull KR is also playing over there as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over there, to see the season start on a high, whether it starts on a high or not as much. But things will officially be rolling. Obviously, the Cubs will still be playing a lot more of their spring training, because I don't think it finishes until halfway through next month, I think, is spring training. And then the season properly starts, I think, towards the end of March, start of April, officially. So we'll be talking about them a little bit, obviously miscellaneous stuff. We'll be talking about the Wanderers, men, obviously in the lead up to finals for the season. Obviously, whether it gets into a situation when the men actually do make finals or not, I highly doubt it at this point. But crazy things have happened, I guess, to say. But we'll talk about the women, obviously, when they come back as well. Lots happening. So with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching this video and this episode of How's My Team. This has been Mario Mantes 100. You guys have a great day night, and of course, take care. Hi guys, I know I just finished the episode. I'm just going to put a little addendum on the Cubs. Obviously I was talking about them. They just won 3-2 in their fourth spring training game of the season. But yeah, 3-2 win over the Royals. Got very nervous there for a second, but literally this is like not even 10 minutes after I just finished recording the episode. So yeah, first win on the board obviously for the Cubs. Hopefully that's a good thing, but they have said before, when they've sucked in spring training, they've played relatively well during the regular season, and sometimes even in the postseason. So we'll see what happens with that, but good to have a win on the board, obviously, and good to get, close it out, despite it being very, very close towards the end. Yeah, very, very nervous there for a second, because they had a few people on base in the last inning. So yeah, we'll see what happens, obviously, with that. But, what can I say? But thanks for watching the episode, guys, and talk to you soon with the next episode, I guess.